Hey, what's up to everybody out there? Welcome to another edition of the Round Table Talk. I am your host, C Money, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about, several topics that we have talked about in the past. We're going to all bundle it up into one. Basically, what I'm talking about is, life today versus life of yesterday or the past. So let's say, how things are come, how it is different today than it was back then. Um, and we're going to talk about that. What I want to talk about is basically how life today compares to life in the previous days, the previous times, and we're going to talk about that. Um, let's get into it. Let's talk about it. I've had several talks, not only with a friend of mine, but from people. How I, you know, talk about life back then. Like I'm gonna say to my thing, life back then was a lot simpler than it is now. I am all for technology. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for technology, for a lot of things that have changed throughout the years, for a lot of technology and a lot of differences, for a lot of things. I'm all for it. I'm all for a lot of this new age of things, new transportations, new food, things, new technology. A lot of these things I'm for, you know, because, back then it may have been a little bit harder and it might be a little bit easier now, but back then it was a lot more funner. Because, like for instance, back then there was only maybe three gaming consoles. You had Atari, you had Nintendo, you had Sega Genesis, and then years came by, you had PlayStation and then Xbox and all of these other gaming consoles. You only had three. Then Atari, Nintendo, Sega Genesis, basically. Back then, kids went outside and played outside. I see kids now, including my nephew, where they just sit in the house and be glued to the get glued to the video games. They come home from school. If they ain't got homework, they go right to the games. Now and then you have it now where you can play against other people online. Cause back then, you used to have gaming parties, and those wasn't really gaming parties. Where your friends come over, mom, dad. Can my boy Charlie come over? Or can my boy John come over? And y'all sit in the room and y'all be playing against each other in the video games. You don't even have to be in the room no more. Oh, yo, bro, I'm finna get online. You finna get online and play Call of Duty? Yeah, let's get online and play Call of Duty. Or I'm finna get online and play, this game. You wanna get online and play this game? Yeah, let's get online and play this game. And then y'all just be playing each other. They in their own bedroom, in their own room. You in your own room, and you click. It's not like, yo, bro, come over to my house. I'm gonna have some chips and some juice. We gonna play the game together. Now you don't even have to be in the same room. You could just be playing from miles, thousands of. You could be in Florida and your homeboy could be all the way in New York, and you don't even have to play with your friends. You be playing with people that you don't even know, and you just be playing with them, and and that's how I understand it because that's how people meet people. Because I've had people that said they've met some incredible people and they started coming, they've met people, they met their boyfriend and girlfriend online do gaming, and then they started talking, or they met new friends that they communicate with in their gaming chat and stuff like that. It's a lot of things. Back then kids used to go outside and play till the street lights come on, and you found different ways of playing, whether it was imagination or basketball, football, a lot of this stuff, and you know, you went to the park, you hung out at the parks, and he was like, "Oh, it's time to go in." My mom said I gotta be in by 6 o'clock. You go in and stuff. Now a lot of these kids they just glued to the TV, glued to the big gaming consoles and stuff like that. Now you have a lot of these things. Back then it was much easier, to have fun. Now it ain't have fun. Remember when you used to go to the malls with your family? Your mom and dad would go shopping in the mall, unless you was going school shopping or clothes shopping for your kids. Your mom and dad go shopping. You go, oh, here's $5 worth of quarters. Go into the arcade, put the 25 cent in. You used to battle your friends out on Galaga or on Pac-Man, or you used to dug it out on, Street Fighter with your friends at the arcade. You put in the quarter and stuff like that. Now these days, kids just, I'm a battle you at home. Arcades is a thing of the past. When you used to go to the food court at the mall and used to hang out with, yo, me and my friends, we finna go, mom, can I go hang out with my friends at the mall? Yeah, go to the mall. Y'all go hang out at the arcade, y'all go inside some of the stores, y'all go to the music stores, but listen to the music, then you go hang out at the little burger joint inside the food court area. Nah, food courts ain't what they used to be. You have all these food court, you used to go to the food court and get like a good burger meal for like $5. Now you go to the food court, La Casaranda Mexican restaurant, or you got all these, back then you used to have what? Taco Viva, Sabaros, Cazoli's Pizza, you had all these little places. Now you got these little fancy restaurants inside the food court. And I'm sitting there, you go to the food court now, you're like, this ain't no food court. What all these restaurants saying? You go in there and you get $20 meals and stuff like back then you have $5 meals. And if you want the family meal, it was like $10, $15. Now you got $20 meals. If you want the family meals, it's like $30, $40. I'm sitting up here like, where has time gone? Now, I admit there's a lot of things. There's several malls I visited, over the past, when I did them in hot spots in South Florida and also traveling with the Roundtable Talk. So if you ever, want to look at, the malls I've been to, the recent mall I think I did was Aventura. I think was the recent one that I did, and if you see the food court they have now is nothing compared to the food court I remember Aventura back then. And it was like, ooh, back then Aventura was the spot to go. It used to be, there was this Italian restaurant that used to be in Aventura Mall, and I used to love going there, get the lasagna and the chicken Parmesan stuff. I used to love going to that place, and it was not like my go-to place, just like. And then not even in the food court, there was a Sabaros that was not in the food court area. Now the Sabaros has closed. A lot of the Sabaros in the mall has closed. There's one at Dolphin Mall that I go to, great place. There's one at there used to be one at the Galleria, and I think I did a video of the Galleria Mall. That's no longer there. And the food court, and I remember going to the food court at Galleria back in. Not when I did the video, because I did the video recently of Galleria, but when me and a friend of mine from college went to Galleria, and this was around the time I was in college at Galleria, and this was in the mid 2000s, because I was in college in my 30s, and I was at technical college, and when we went to the food court. That food court there, and the Galleria is one of the most exquisite malls. It's something similar to Bar Harbor Shops. If you go look at my hotspots in South Florida, it's like Bar Harbor Shop. It's one of those high end malls where you go in there, you're not getting you gotta have at least $500 or more to go inside there, because you going inside them, you ain't buying no $1.99 shirt or no $5 t-shirts, or you're not getting, and you get a sale to them is probably $100, on an outfit, and that's a sale on a shirt or whatever. And I went in there, and we was sitting in the food court, and I was like, okay, this is not a regular food court. First of all, the restaurants in there are not your regular food court like Sabaros and stuff like that. Ludus Express, if you ever heard of Cajun Kelly's Grill, and stuff like that. And then you had a man walking around playing the violin from table to table. And I'm sitting up here like, what food court has this? A regular food court has seats, they have like thousands of seats, they have various restaurants, like Dolphin Mall. If you've been to Dolphin Mall here in South Florida, they food court, they have a Burger King, they have a Sabaros, they have a Charlie's, they have a Kelly's Cajun Grill, they have a Ludus Express, which is a Chinese restaurant. They have all of these, regular, you go to these fancy malls in the food court, they have these 5-star restaurants that's supposed to be food court advantage. Those are not food court. And then you had a man walking around playing the violin, and I'm sitting up there like, you playing the violin in the food court? Like, where is the feeling in this. And I understand like a lot of these malls, they're high end and they're upscale, so they give people the upscaleness of their malls to where, you're paying all this money, I want to come in with nice looking things, but I look at it as if some technology should just been left alone. Like, I go in a food court, I want to see simple food. Food I could pay $10, $20 in. I don't want to pay no $30 worth of food for one person inside of a food court. I mean, I have did it before because when I go to Sabaros, I get the lasagna, the mac and cheese, the chicken parmesan. I get the whole scenario, and sometimes they come up to like 30. And I understand that, but when you paying like, oh, I'm gonna get a whole pizza, but it's a 5-star pizza restaurant, you're paying like $30 for just a whole pizza. Like, no, but I'm used to paying like maybe $15 to $20 or something for a whole. No, you paying all this money for this, and I'm like, you know what? I mean, this is not what I've caught in. Like, that's why I say back then it was more simpler when you went to places. It was more simpler how people did things, and I know a lot of you might fight me on this, but and there are people out there that agree because I've seen several videos and I've seen several things where yeah, I agree. I do like new technology. I do like the flat screen TVs. I do like remote controls, TVs and things like that. Versus you had to get up and change the channel, what I'm saying, like that. And I do like the fact that a lot of these arcades now, they don't have the coin thing. They have the cards, which is good because to me, back then when you went to the arcade and you use all your tokens, you're like, I want to save my tokens for the next time I come to the arcade. And then you try to save your tokens, and then your tokens be all over your room and stuff like that. Now you have gaming cards where you can save the credits on your card for the next time you go. And I do that all the time. And I'm not mad at it, Like I told you, and I did a video recently of a place called Arcade Time, and they had a back room that was catering to retro games. And when and if you go back and look at it, it's Hotspots in South Florida. It's at the Fall Shopping Center, and it was one of my favorite places. Not saying that it's but it's one of my, because I like retro games, arcade games. Even when I go to a lot of these places, I like to play retro games, just like Arcade Odyssey. When I went there, that's one of my favorites because they have a lot of these retro games and stuff like that, and I like playing it. And a lot of these kids today would not know the feeling how it was for us back then. Because we had fun back then. You went to the malls, they either did 3 things, maybe 4. You went to the malls to go school shopping for school clothes. You hung out with your friends going to the movies. You end up at the arcade at the mall, or you end up hanging out with your friends in the food court. Other than that, you ain't really do too much. A lot of these people now, they go to the malls, they go shopping in the malls. I have not bought nothing from a mall and God knows how long. Yes, I went to the Falls and I ended up eating at one of the restaurants. Check it out in my food review, South Florida. And I ended up going to the arcade at the Falls. Check it out in my hotspot, South Florida. But at the same time, as far as shopping, I have not shopped in a mall since I don't know when. Because a lot of these malls now are not malls how we used to have them. You used to have these discount stores and used to have these chain stores like, Woolworth, McCory's, Sears, even though Sears kind of exists, you had a lot of these stores where people can go in and can afford. You didn't go into these stores and you had $100 outfit. Back then, $100 outfits, for $100 you got about 3 or 4 outfits. Now for $100 you can barely get one outfit. And I'm like, back then it was much easier. And I know a lot of you are going to fight me with this because time changes and say, well, we got newer technology and now all of this stuff. Because like I tell my mom, because my mom makes handkerchiefs and she, sells her handkerchiefs. And, she be going to the little fabric stores and, the fabric stores, they be got, you get a yard of fabric for $1 and stuff like that. But when you go to places like Hobby Lobby and Michaels and stuff like that be selling these fabrics and crafts and stuff, and like when she go to Hobby Lobby and she get these the fabrics and stuff, they be like $5.99 per yard or $2-3.99 per year. And I told my mama, I say, these stuff are top quality. Even though the stuff that you get at the mom and pop fabric stores are good too, but a lot of this stuff that you see in these chained fabric stores, like, you know, Joanne Fabrics, you know, Michaels, Hobby Lobby, these are top notch quality, you know, and you're gonna come out of your pocket. And you know, back then, you know, you used to go to these. Woolworth was one of my favorite stores. McCory's was one of my favorite stores, you know, and stuff like that. Now you have, you know, Walmart, you know, and Amazon and all this stuff. And I look at it as if back then it was much simpler because a lot of things was much simpler. You know, you caught the bus with with your friends. You know, you went to the mall and hung out and stuff. You know, and I understand now because of technology. You know, things have changed. Now you have modern day buses. Now you have Uber and Lyft and rideshare program. You know, now you have, you know, a lot of these, you know, new transportation options and stuff. Look at back in what, 2019 and back in 2018, 2017 and all that. Look back then when you had rental scooters where you can rent a scooter through Lyft and Uber and stuff like that. Because I remember in Georgia, I visited Georgia in 2019 and I tried to do one of those scooters, and I didn't know how to ride a scooter, and I tried to ride one, you know, just to ride around downtown Atlanta, and I couldn't, you know, even though they still charged me like $1 and some change because I requested it, but I couldn't. Now they don't even have the scooters no more because everybody's buying their own scooters now, and you know, that was a thing of the past. You know, Miami, they used to have them all a lot. And they used to have little areas where you can station the scooters because a lot of people used to complain about how the scooters was all over the place and it was hard to walk on the sidewalks because there was a scooter laying on the ground, or if it's not laying on the ground, it's on a kickstand, and you know it was, you had to walk around them to get it. And then they started having it, and they still have some of the markings on the grounds. If you live in Miami, you go downtown, they still have some markings on where they used to have it. Where this is the station or the area where you can put your rent a scooter and stuff like that. But it's things, you know, it's a lot going down, and back then it was more simpler. You know, you went inside the burger restaurants. Oh my God, a combo was like $2.99. If you got the big combo, it was like $3-4, and the regular combo was $2.99. Now you going by these burger restaurants, a Big Mac combo is damn near $10, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like what the heck is going on? And I understand because the cost of production is going up and the cost of thing, because I know now the cost of living is going up. You know, back then you had an apartment for like $200-300, and that's here in South Florida. Now you got an apartment, you're paying them at $1,300-1,400, and that's in Liberty City. You know, that's not in South Beach and you know, and I'm like, oh my God, like what are we going through? Like back then it was simpler times, you know. Kids did, you know, you didn't have to worry about your kids being outside, you know, and then you didn't have to worry about the kids went outside and played outside. Now kids getting kidnapped from left and right, getting kidnapped. You know, back then when kids got kidnapped, they had the original. You know, you had a man riding by, you know, and be like, hey, you want to get in my car and things like that. That was the kidnapping. Now people just, you walking down the street and somebody just running, just snatch a kid and keep running, and that's the new kidnap. I seen it on the news the other week that the lady tried to kidnap somebody else's child in the airport, and I'm like, yeah. Back then, kidnapping was just your kid sitting at the bus stop. The man come by, I got candy. You want to come with me? And then that's how kids got kidnapped. You know, now you got kidnappers. They just run up behind you and just kidnap you and kidnap your kid and just keep going, and you can't do nothing. You know, but it's like back then, a lot of things were a lot simpler. Now, don't get me wrong. I do like technology now, because a lot of these things, you know, are technology, like the bus cards. You know, you put money on your bus card, you can tap it, you can go. You know, you ain't got to worry about, oh, I ain't got no money, but wait, I got money on my bus card, so you know, I could just tap on my bus card because I got money on it. You know, when I went to Atlanta, I had a bus card that had some more rides on it, and it had money on it. When I went back, that was in 2019. When I went back in, when it was 2023, I believe, when I went to Atlanta, that card was expired long ago, and they just say you got to go to customer service, and I was like, nah, I'm just gonna buy another card. Now the card I got then still got money and probably got credits on it, but it's probably low, gone because it's now 2025, so it's probably no good, So I'm looking at it as if I understand a lot of this technology. I want to know, do you? My question is, and I'm going to say this towards the end. What do you think? Do you like technology now? Or do you like technology, or do you like back then technology? I like both. Because back then, certain things we had back then was better than what we is, and I like the fact that you can order online and you can, you know, get your food by just paying with your credit card. Because back then when you ordered pizza and they say, oh, the total was 2025, you had to look in there and say, do I got 2025, or I got to run to the ATM and stuff. Now, 2025, let me just put my card information in, or let me just, or if you got Google, Google already had your info, tap, tap, oh, pay, things like that. I understand that, because now you ain't got, you got to make sure you had the money before the pizza man got here, to get, in the 30 minutes or less, or it's free. Oh my God. Now you have perks because you have, rewards programs, you order online and, you got rewards programs and stuff like that. How back then, you walk into the restaurants, you walk into McDonald's or Burger King, the cashier be right there waiting on you. Hi. As soon as you walk in, hi, welcome to McDonald's, welcome to Burger King, Taco Bell. I went to one. I went to one, and this probably wasn't recently, but I went to one time, and it said order at the kiosk, and then if you need to pay cash, select pay cash, and then proceed to the register. It's like you're eliminating the cashier's job, because at Burger King and McDonald's, they still do have that one person that, because I've seen it at several Burger King, McDonald's, they still have that one person that runs the registers, but they don't be at the register. They're doing other stuff. They're restocking the condiment station. They're helping out with the drive-through orders, stuff like that. And, because now they have these self-ordering kiosks, and I did do an episode about it at a Burger King where I showed you that this is the new modern age Burger Kings. They have self-ordering kiosks now where you can order your food on the kiosk and pay with card, and if you're paying with cash, you just order your food there, and then you take your receipt and everything to the register, and then you pay. Because I believe I did that one time where I ordered online. No, I ordered at the kiosk, and then and this was recently, and then I didn't want to pay with card. I paid with cash, and I was like, oh, I paid online, and then they looked it up and said, oh, this is this, and I gave them the money. And I don't remember what restaurant it was. I know it was a local fast food chain or whatever. But yeah, a lot of this stuff, this is what goes down, and I'm like, you understand that this is okay. So, and back then, it was a process when kids used to hang out, when things used to be simpler, when, you had TGIF, you had modern day, every night of the week it was something to do. You came in on Friday nights, it was TGIF, your family ate out. Friday night was the only night that your family didn't want to cook, because that's how it was in my household. My mom, well, no, she cooked, but it was my night of, eating out, because my mom used to always on Friday nights, she used to always tell me, go to the fish market, get the catfish cleaned, cut, cleaned, and split. No, clean and split, basically. And then right across the street from the meat market was a McDonald's. I used to go get her two little pieces of catfish, cleaned and split, go right across the street to McDonald's and get my food and come home. And I'd be like, oh yeah, things like that. And Friday night sometimes used to be pizza night in the household where the parents come home from work. I don't want to do it, let's order pizza, and things like that. Now, the times are different, And I like modern day to certain things. Like I like Uber and Lyft, because for me, Uber and Lyft is a great alternative for you. Like, say for instance, you're late for work, and you need to get there. Like, if you like a person who doesn't have a vehicle and you're late for work, and you miss your bus or whatever, and now, I'm gonna be late because I missed my bus. Call Uber in 5 minutes, you're there. You'll probably get there before the bus even get there, and or like for areas, like if you going somewhere and you want to get there in a hurry. Like, say for instance, like for me, Uber is a great thing for me and my mom, because my mom is an elderly woman. She doesn't drive, and she has to go to her doctors, and sometimes she gets on the bus or the trolley or whatever the case may be, and she, when she has to go to places she don't know, or go like she's quick in a hurry, I Uber her to her doctor's offices and stuff like that, to where, okay, it's a convenient, she get dropped off at the doctor's office and things like that. And then for areas that doesn't provide transportation, there's like, you go to certain areas, just like when I visited Warner Robins, Georgia, when I visited, and I did the shows, when I did the Museum of Aviation, when I did the Rigby's Entertainment Complex. Warner Robins does not have public transportation. Now imagine if I would have went there and there was no such thing as Uber and Lyft. How would I got around? And a friend of mine who lives there was saying that, I don't, they don't have a car, so they moved there with their family. Their family do have a car, so how can I get around? And I'm like, yeah, I like the fact that now you're monitoring. What I don't like is a lot of places that are still stuck in the past, because I feel like every city, regardless of if it's a big city with 10,000 people or a small city that got 1,000 people, you should have some type of transportation going, because you realize as you get older in your 70s and 80s and 90s, there are people out there that cannot drive anymore because of their health conditions. There are people, I know I've seen 90-year-old people and 80-year-old people that are out there still driving because they can drive. But look how many car accidents, because a lot of these drivers are elderly people and they drive and then they get into accidents and stuff like that. So I look at it and say, why can't we have transportation in every city? And that should be a law, that every city, regardless if it's a city with 5,000 or 500 people, even if it's a city with 100 people, why not have a little car service for people who needs to get around? When I visited, and I told you this, when I visited Albany, Georgia, they have bus service, and their bus service are like mini buses. They're not those long 32-seater buses and 60-seater buses, or how many seaters it is. They have these 20 seats or whatever. They have these small buses, and they service stops at 8 o'clock. And I'm like, and me and a friend of mine who stayed in Albany at the time, we went to a club, and the clubs is at night. And I'm like, how do these people get around for nightlife? I know every now and then there's somebody out there that wants a nightlife. And I know with a lot of these Georgia cities, everything is spaced out, and just like when I went to Warner Robins, a lot of these, all in one day, I did everything in one day. I did the mall, the Houston Mall, and I think that's how they say it. Then from the Houston Mall, I had to go. I went from my hotel to the Houston Mall, from the Houston Mall to the Museum of Aviation. From the Museum of Aviation, I had to go to the Rigby's Entertainment Complex. Then from Rigby Entertainment Complex, I went back to my hotel. And I'm like, I did all that with Uber and Lyft, and I kept, balancing how much the money is, because I said, I'm not paying this much and then this much and shit, and it was like, how do these people get around? And I like, y'all still stuck in the 90s, to where, hey, this is a city that has, they may not have a lot of visitors and stuff, but y'all need some type of transportation, because if a person ain't got a car, how do they get around? And nobody wants to every day take a taxi cab to work. And $5 a day, regardless of where you're going, that adds up to $30, $40, $50, $100 a plus a month, to where you be like, dang, I spend this much money on transportation. Well, you need to have transportation so people can get around. So what do y'all think about this? Do y'all think that technology back then was a little bit simpler than it is now? Do you like, well, and I'm not saying with just technology, life itself, do you think life back then was much easier than it is now? Or do you think now is better than back then? Honestly, I like both ends. I like life simpler back then, because back then, as kids, we did things that didn't cost. We did things that didn't break the bank. We didn't have to have a lot of money to go to the mall. Even if we went to the mall broke, we walked around the mall, hung out at the mall, and that was it. Even if we didn't have but $1, we went to the arcade and paid $1, and stuff like that. Even though now it ain't $1 no more to go to the arcade, because now arcades, you're paying like 30, 40, credits, or you're paying like 3-4 tokens just to do one game and stuff like that. And I like both ends. I like today and I like the past. So let me know how you think about this. Comment at this at the bottom of this page. You can also email me roundtable00 at yahoo.com. Let me know What do you think? Do you think we had it good back then? Do you think you like it better now? Or what's the case? Let me know how it is and what's the situation, how you feel about this. I thank y'all for watching this. This is another episode of the Roundtable Talk. I am your host, C Money. As always, stay safe, stay blessed, stay hydrated, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care.